All right, so now that we've provided you with, I think, ample background to understand both what SSH is, what SSH keys are, how they work, and why we want to use them, let's go ahead and actually generate some keys. If you aren't sure whether you have a SSH key, you can actually go into in your home directory. There's a hidden directory, which is the .ssh directory, and you can see what's in there. We'll just list it. And now I had this my ID RSA with the underscores and .pub, and just the my ID RSA with underscores are my actual public-private keys, which I'm not going to show you, which I renamed so that I could generate new ones, because by default what you're going to end up with is an ID underscore RSA private key and the ID underscore RSA public key. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's very simple. In a Mac or Linux environment, you just SSH keygen -t, which is giving us the type, and we want an RSA. And there's a bunch of other options that you could add here, but really we just want to generate an RSA key, and we can go ahead and off you go. It's asking where you wanted to. Here it's asking where you want to put this keys, and in this case, it's just offering you the default location. You could, if you have some reason, define another one, so we can just accept the default. Here is your opportunity to enter a passphrase, and again, if this was actually if this was actually my key, I would absolutely say put in a passphrase. If it's something that you're using to enable a service to securely communicate with another service, in the context of automating something, a passphrase is going to be problematic, and you could leave it off. For our case, since we're doing a demo, we can just go ahead and not add one, just hit return. Okay, and we've now generated a key, and it gives us the SHA-256 hash. It's has a random art image, and the idea behind this random art image is that any key will have a random art image that is quite different. And for our purposes, really, if you we're not going to make use of it. There's also a fingerprint that will show up, which is a bunch of numbers, and the idea is this is supposed to give you a visual idea if maybe you're using a key pair and something is up. It'll give you if you're familiar with your random art image or the fingerprint, you can then say, hey, this doesn't quite look right, and maybe you double check to make sure. Potentially you're just trying to connect to the wrong machine, which is good to know, but in some cases it might mean that there's something not quite proper going on, and you might want to abort your session. Okay, so we're still in the .ssh directory. Now we should see, there it is, the ID underscore RSA and the ID underscore RSA.pub. Now, since this is a course and I am not going to actually use these keys, I'm just going to delete them. We can go ahead, and I don't mind showing you the what the private key looks like. And here we go, and it tells you quite explicitly. So if you quite often, one of the things that you will do is copy and paste your SSH key into a remote environment. This will let you know that you're dealing with a private key. It very clearly tells you that this is a private key both at the beginning and end of the file, and clearly this is not the file that you would want to be sharing anywhere. Okay. Get out of here. Now let's take a look at the public key, and this is what you would be wanting to copy and work with. Looks a little bit different, right? First off, it starts off with SSH-RSA. You also have a little comment there at the end, which gives you a sense of where you generated it. And this whole string is the key. You don't actually need this last little bit, but everything else would be, actually you don't need to necessarily copy this, but it helps you identify that it is your key or the key that you think it is. Obviously this is the default, but this SSH-RSA and the 4As are pretty much what you would expect to see along with all of these other random things. So you can really think of it in a way as a really, really long and random password, which is one of the strengths of these. But then the automation that in terms of authenticating and confirming the identity of both users at either end, both your machine and the machine at the other end, is the other real power that this protocol and this method of authentication have over using just a standard password. All right, so let's say we wanted to SSH into a remote host. Now, we can do that actually without using public-private keys. We could say and now we're being challenged with a password. So this is the standard username password sort of model, but let's say we don't want to use a password. Now let's escape from that. In this case, when we set up our public-private keys, we can now simply use essentially the same command, except for now it's not going to ask for the password because it's automatically going to generate a public, it's going to make that connection between the public and private keys. What's even more clever is if we then don't want to type this out every single time we want to SSH and rather create an alias. Let's say we call it dev. Now if we want to SSH, and in this case I haven't set up the public-private key pair on this site, but dev will now provide us with the username at least, and in this case we would still need the password. But if you have gotten your key pair set up, this will automatically then log you in. Now, if we want to get a little bit fancier and more elegant, perhaps, we can look at our SSH config file and add some configurations to it, or customizations to it. So this is going to be in your .ssh file, so we want to switch over there. And there is the config file, so we'll edit the config. And we've got actually don't need that, so we can get rid of that one. So now what we can do is say, for this dev alias that we've created, we can define a host name. Perhaps we want to specify a different port to SSH to. The default would be 22, maybe it's 3400, 34,000. And then finally we can define our user. And with this set up, you can now basically SSH dev, and the options are going to be pulled out of the configuration file, so you don't need to send up an alias every time you log into your shell, and this is already there for you. So again, just a way to cut away a few of the extra steps that you would have to go through, especially if you're doing this continuously in a dev process, even if it's saving you doing this once or twice or 3 times a day, that's still worth the little bit of effort that it would take to set this up.